Hello, my name is John Sherman, and this is my wife Hillary Sherman, and we are going to be talking about leadership. And just kind of to start us off, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe the position you hold, and kind of how you got to that position?
So I am a CPA by licensure. So that's how I started, quote unquote. I actually started out in banking and went to school many, many moons ago, obtaining my CPA license, worked in public accounting for several years, moved to corporate accounting, and now I'm where I'm at with a medical device company. I worked in their finance department for many years as their director of finance, and now I'm actually relocated to Ireland and am the director of or vice president of international operations. So I oversee all of the operations here in Ireland for our international business, any business that's outside the domestic United States. And that would be not only the finances, but the human resources, the legal, the operations, supply chain, you name it. We're wearing many hats.
Yes, I guess you would in a small company like yours. You tend to have to interact with all departments kind of on a regular basis. So, from a leadership standpoint, how would you interact with the people, your subordinates, the people that work for you, as well as people in the other areas of your business, such as supply chain or engineering or any of those?
So this has actually been quite a area of growth for our company. Within the last several years, we went from being a relatively small company with around 20 employees to now we're upwards of 60 employees. And for a company going through that transition, um, styles of leadership have to change as you grow. But I think fundamentally, how you look at leadership um, probably remains a part of the character. Myself personally, I like a more collective environment. Not to say that everything is a democratic decision, but I do like to my team. I like to gain value and input from my team. I feel like when you lead by um, authority or lead like a dictator, you don't really get buy-in from your team, and you might not be on the right track. So unless you have um, you really need buy-in from your team to get any project to work and to really lead with and build the enthusiasm amongst your team to get them to do anything. Um, so I like to approach my team with the strategic initiatives and have them come to me and with strategies as to how we implement these things. They know how they do their jobs best. Now, granted, I do think one of the other fundamentals of a leader should be, having an intimate working knowledge of what your team's doing. Maybe you aren't, completely versed in every step of their day-to-day workflow, but to effectively manage someone and to really lead them and show them that you understand them, you need to understand what they're spending their time on. You need to understand their pain points and their weaknesses, and the areas that cause them grief. I think that helps the relationship. It helps that buy-in. It helps your team understand that you have their best interest at heart.
Let's expand on something you said about the democratic versus authoritative type leadership styles and how it intertwines with kind of group processes as it pertains to leadership. Do you find yourself working in the groups quite often, or is it more of a this is the on a macro level, this is where we're going with the company, you guys do your thing?
I think it depends. It depends on the people that you have working for you. My leadership style is very hands off. Um, our company is too small for anybody to micromanage anything, so we really do hire people that can work autonomously with minimal assistance. Um, However, you do find as you build your team that sometimes there are people that need a little more love and they need a little more support in those types of positions. And so a lot of times I do have to jump in and kind of, re-guide or reshape where things might be going. But I think if you are getting the buy-in from the team that you want, and you're inspiring them and coaching them and help grow them as your subordinates. At the end of the day, the philosophy is that I want everybody that works for me to take my job. That's the only way I get to the next position, is if I employ people that report to me that can do what I can do someday, and helping enrich them and enrich their careers. So if your people, if you see that in your people, then you should be able to give them a strategic initiative with minimal guidance, and let them see what they can do with it. And definitely check in, always know what's going on, and always be aware of where things are going, but let them have the autonomy to make some decisions, and give them the power to do that.
Well, on a day-to-day, what might some of the issues be, very briefly, on some issues that you might have in leadership?
I think specifically with regards to leadership, I have people, maybe middle managers, that report to me that are very strong in some areas and are very weak in others. And so it's my job to develop them and develop their soft skills so that they can be well-rounded managers. Especially at that middle management tier. They're the people that are caught between upper management and the people that report to them. And that's a tough place to be. So, they need to feel like they're being supported by executive management. They also need to feel like they're being heard. However, they also need to recognize that sometimes the people beneath them are lacking something that maybe they're not giving. And so it's my job to develop that tier of manager.
Okay.
And I think, yes, day to day, that's the biggest challenge I have, is basically, that's the level at which you expect people to be more well-rounded. Your skills only go so far, then you actually have to have the soft skills to be a well-rounded manager that moves up to that executive tier.
And just going back to something that you said in the opening statements about kind of where you are and where you're from, or how you got in your position. You said you were a CPA. So as a CPA, ethics play a huge part in your decision making, as from both a regulatory standpoint as well as personal ethics. Can you expand on that a little bit, maybe?
Sure. You hear in a lot of management philosophy, and in accounting and internal controls and risk aversion, you hear tone from the top, and it's absolutely true. If you, as an executive management team, support or promote even unethical behavior, you cannot expect anybody beneath you or anybody on your team to think that there's anything wrong with that. And that goes from blatant promotion to unethical behavior to letting things slide, quote unquote. As an accountant, anybody who understands Enron and things that happen there will understand that that's a slippery slope. The difference between, blatantly making a decision to do something wrong versus just kind of skating the boundaries of what's morally and ethically appropriate.
And so, through your professional growth and your professional career, and finding yourself in the position you were, do you feel that your gender or your culture has either hindered or helped your development and leadership, and whether or not that has affected others around you?
I think the fact that I'm a female actually helps in my position. I am... That's not to say that our company is dominated by men. However, I am one of the only executives that is female, and I do think that I bring a more thoughtful, softer approach to some of the areas that I manage. Some of them being HR. I think of things that the two men that I report to just don't think about. It's not because they're mean, and it's not because they're men. It's just because
it might not be right there.
It's not in their, I have to shop benefits for our family, and I have to worry about, I had to worry about, the scheduling of our daughter's activities. And, I had to think about all those things. And because I was thinking about all those things personally, I think about how a company should think about those things. And I always said that when I was, the peon, the new entry level person at the bank I started at, I always said, when I have a chance to do this differently, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to care about people when I do. And I think that is kind of the philosophy I try to bring. Is am I being fair, and are we looking at this with a pragmatic point of view? Am I not being subjective? Am I being objective? Am I giving people the benefit of the doubt? That's to say we don't, throw down the gauntlet when we need to, but, we try to be fair.
Sure. And lastly, any advice that you would give the students who might study leadership in college, and how to kind of transfer what they might learn in college and into the professional and corporate, in your specific application, the corporate side of it, and how that might transition, just briefly.
I think number one, read the good management books. The New York Times bestsellers on management are typically, they have some very good. There's some good books out there on Fortune 500 companies and their executive leadership teams that holds true in a lot of situations. And then secondarily, have a mentor or have several and look at the different management styles and look at how you like to be managed. And I think at the end of the day, as to be a good leader, you need to lead people, you need to inspire them. And some of that inspiration comes, with managing people in a way that they need to be managed. And I think it takes a long time for people to learn that as they come up in their career. It's not about how you want to lead, it's about how people need to be led. And people have different incentive structures that work and make them tick, and you have to figure your people out and figure out how to relate to them and how to really inspire them and make them grow, and they will do nothing but help you out if that's what you promote to them.
Perfect. Okay, and that concludes our interview. Thank you very much for taking the time to sit with me and talk with me about leadership and how important it is.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.